Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kiran Bendigeri from Grafosyss IAS. In this video, let's have a look at 7th standard social 4th chapter. That is gender. Gender is a term that you may often have heard. It is a term, however, that is not easily understood. It tends to remain distant from our lives and restricted to discussions during training programs. In fact, it is something that all of us experience in our lives and on a daily basis. It determines, for example, who we are and what we will become, where we can go and where not, the life choices available to us and those we eventually make. Our understanding of gender is often based on the family and society we live in. This leads us to think that the roles we see men and women around us play are fixed and natural. In fact, these roles differ across communities around the world. By gender, then, we mean the many social values and stereotypes our cultures attach to the biological distinction male and female. It is a term that helps us to understand many of the inequalities and power relations between men and women in society. So gender, our understanding regarding gender, it is the male or female is usually based on the family and the society we live in. It is associated with our cultures and the stereotypes which we follow and all. And it is the term which helps us to understand the inequalities and power relations in our society. The following two chapters explore the concept of gender without actually using the term. Instead, through different pedagogic tools like case studies, stories, classroom activities, data analysis, and photographs, students are encouraged to question and think about their own lives and the society around them. Gender is often mistakenly thought to be something that concerns women or girls alone. Thus, care has been taken in these chapters to draw boys into the discussion as well. Chapter 4 uses two case studies situated in different places and points in time to show how girls and boys are brought up or socialized differently. This enables them to understand that the process of socialization is not uniform. Instead, it is socially determined and changes continuously over time. The chapter also addresses the fact that societies assign different values to the roles men and women play and the work they do, which becomes a basis for inequality and discrimination. Through a storyboard, students discuss the issue of housework done primarily by women. Housework is often not considered work and therefore made invisible and devalued. So, in the coming passages, we are going to study different case studies, stories and all. We are going to study about the roles played by men and women in our society and right. So these through our storyboard, students discuss the issue of homework done primarily by women. Housework is often not considered work and therefore made invisible and devalued. So these are the most of the things which we know, right? Chapter 5 further develops ideas around gender inequalities in the world of work and describes women's struggles for equality. So we are going to discuss about this. Women's struggles for equality. Through a classroom activity, students begin questioning existing stereotypes regarding work and career choices. The chapter also points out that opportunities like education are not equally available to boys and girls. By reading about the lives of two Indian women from the 19th and 20th centuries, students see how women struggled to change their lives. By learning to read and write, change on a large scale usually takes place through collective struggles. So the struggles during 19th and 20th centuries by women to change their lives and also to get literated, to get education and all, right? So yeah, large scale usually takes place, change on a large scale usually takes place through collective struggles. Growing up as boys and girls. Being a boy or a girl is an important part of one's identity. The society we grow up in teaches us what kind of behavior is acceptable for girls and boys, what boys and girls can or cannot do. So while growing up, we know that there are different behaviors which are taught to us, that what we can do or what we cannot do. We often grow up thinking that these things are exactly the same everywhere. But do all societies look at boys and girls in the same way? We will try and answer this question in this chapter. We will also look at how the different roles assigned to boys and girls prepare them for their future roles as men and women. We will learn that most societies value men and women differently. The roles women play and the work they do are usually valued less than the roles men play and the work they do. This chapter will also examine how inequalities between men and women emerge in the area of work. So here we are going to discuss about the inequalities between men and women at the workplace. Even though men and women does the same work, they are not treated equally, and right. So the same thing is explained here, nothing else. And growing up in Samoa in the 1920s. The Samoan Islands are part of a large group of small islands in the southern part of the Pacific Ocean. Samoan Islands. Let's have a look at it in the map, right? In the 1920s, according to research reports on Samoan society, children did not go to school. They learned many things such as how to take care of children or do household work from older children and from adults. Fishing was a very important activity on the islands. Young people therefore learned to undertake long fishing expeditions. But they learnt these things at different points in their childhood. So this is the scenario of Samoan Islands, where the children were not sent to school. They were taught to do fishing and other activities on the islands. So this is Samoan Islands, right? This is a beautiful island which is in the central South Pacific. This is one of the tourist place, right? It is near Fiji, you can see that. And here this is in central Pacific, right? Here comes Australia and New Zealand, and here is Papua New Guinea, right? Yeah. As soon as babies could walk, their mothers or other adults no longer looked after them. Older children, often as young as 5 years old, took over this responsibility. Both boys and girls looked after their younger siblings, but by the time a boy was about 9 years old, he joined the older boys in learning outdoor jobs like fishing and planting coconuts, right? As soon as they reach 9-year-olds, they were joined by they had to join other boys in learning jobs like fishing and planting coconuts. Girls had to continue looking after small children or do errands for adults till they were teenagers. But once they became teenagers, they had much more freedom. After the age of 14 or so, girls also went on fishing trips, worked in the plantations, learned how to weave baskets. So these were jobs of girls. Cooking was done in special cooking houses where boys were supposed to do most of the work while girls helped with the preparations. Right. Growing up male in Madhya Pradesh in the 1960s. The following is adapted from an account of experiences of being in a small town in Madhya Pradesh in the 1960s. From class 6 onwards, boys and girls went to separate schools. We are studying about the male guys in 1960s, right? Boys and girls went to separate schools from class 6 onwards. The girls' school was designed very differently from the boys' school. They had a central courtyard where they played in total seclusion and safety from the outside world. The boys' school had no such courtyard, and our playground was just a big space attached to the school. Every evening, once school was over, boys watched as hundreds of schoolgirls crowded the narrow streets. As these girls walked on the streets, they looked so purposeful. This was unlike the boys, who used the streets as a place to stand around idling, to play, to try out tricks with their bicycles. For the girls, the street was simply a place to get straight home. So this is the difference. In 1960s, boys used the streets as a place to stand around idling, to play, and to try out tricks, right? They were doing all these things. But for the girls, the street was for simply to for simply a place to get straight home, right? The girls always went in groups, perhaps because they also carried fears of being teased or attacked. So after reading the two examples above, we realize that there are many different ways of growing up. So in Samoan Islands, the lifestyle was different for boys and girls, and in Madhya Pradesh it was quite different from them, right? After reading the two examples above, we realize that there are many different ways of growing up. Often we think that there is only one way in which children grow up. This is because we are most familiar with our own experiences. If we talk to our elders in our family, we will see that their childhoods were probably very different from us. Even in our family, if we discuss with our older generation, we can able to know that their lifestyle, their experiences were much different from our generation. We also realize that societies make clear distinction between boys and girls. This begins from a very young age. We are, for example, given different toys to play with. Boys are usually given cars to play with and girls dolls. Both toys can be a lot of fun to play with. Why are girls then given dolls and boys cars? Toys become a way of telling children that they will have different futures when they become men and women. If we think about it, this difference is created in the smallest and most everyday things. How girls must dress, what games boys should play, how girls need to talk softly or boys need to be tough. All these are ways of telling children that they have specific roles to play when they grow up to be men and women. Later in this in life, this affects the subjects we can study or the careers we can choose. So in this passage it is given that boys and girls are given different toys, and that they will have different futures when they become men and women, and how the girls must dress, and what games that boys should play, and girls should need to talk softly and boys need to be tough. These are taught during the childhood days. In most societies, including our own, the roles men and women play or the work they do are not valued equally. Men and women do not have the same status. Let us look at how this difference exists in the work done by men and women. So as we discussed earlier, even though men and women does the same thing, they do not have the same status. Their work is not valued in the same way. My mother does not work, valuing housework. Across the world, the main responsibility for the housework and caregiving tasks like looking after the family, especially children, the elderly and sick members, lies with women. Yet as we have seen, the work that women do within the home is not recognized as work. It is also assumed that this is something that comes naturally to women. It therefore does not have to be paid for, and society devalues this work. So we know that the housewives who does work in their work are not valued, even though they do many hard work. They cook, they clean the house, they take care of senior citizens, they take care of children. They are not valued in the same way as the men does. Men were. Lives of domestic workers. Many homes, particularly in towns and cities, employ domestic workers. They do a lot of work: sweeping and cleaning, washing clothes and dishes, cooking, looking after young children or the elderly. Most domestic workers are women. Sometimes even young boys or girls are employed to do this work. Wages are low as domestic work does not have much value. A domestic worker's day can begin as early as 5 in the morning and end as late as 12 at night. Despite the hard work they do, their employers often do not show them much respect. This is what Melanie, a domestic worker, had to say about her experience of working in Delhi. So domestic workers, you may know about them. They do all the things like washing clothes and dishes, cooking, looking after young children or the senior citizens, etc. Right? Their timings are from morning 5 to they may work up to midnight. And here is the story of one domestic worker, what she has said. My first job was with a rich family that lived in a 3-storied house. The Memsab was very strange as she would shout to get any work done. My work was in the kitchen. There were 2 other girls who did the cleaning. Our day would begin at 5 o'clock. For breakfast we would get a cup of tea and 2 dry rotis. We could never get a third roti. In the evening, when I cooked the food, the 2 other girls would beg me to give them an extra roti. I would secretly give it to them and make an extra one for myself. We were so hungry after working through the day, we could not wear chappals in the house. In the winter, our feet would swell up with the cold. I used to feel scared of the Mem Sahib, but also felt angry and humiliated. Did we not work all day? Did we not deserve to be treated with some respect? So even they though did hard work and all, they were not given respect, and they were not given them proper food and all. So this is the story of a domestic worker, right? In fact, what we commonly term as housework actually involves many different tasks. A number of these tasks require heavy physical work. In both rural and urban areas, women and girls have to fetch water. In rural areas, women and girls carry heavy headloads of firewood. That's like washing clothes, cleaning, sweeping, and picking up loads require bending, lifting, and carrying. Many chores like cooking involve standing for long hours in front of hot stoves. The work women do is strenuous and physically demanding, words that we normally associate with men. Right? So in rural and also urban areas, women and girls does hard work. They do all the cleaning, sweeping, and all, and they fetch water. They do the work women do is strenuous and physically demanding. Right. Another aspect of housework and caregiving that we do not recognize is that it is very time consuming. In fact, if we add up the housework and the work women do outside the home, we find that women spend much more time working than men and have much less time for leisure. So it's about the woman who does housework and also the work outside the home. They do lot of work and they spend much more time working compared to men. As we have seen, the low value attached to a woman's household and caregiving work is not an individual or family matter. It's part of a larger system of inequality between men and women. It therefore has to be dealt with through actions not just at the level of the individual or the family but also by the government. As we know now, equality is an important principle of our constitution. The constitution says that being male or female should not become a reason for discrimination. So remember this thing. The constitution says that male or female should not become a reason for discrimination. In reality, inequality between the sexes exists. The government is therefore committed to understanding the reasons for this and taking positive steps to remedy the situation. For example, it recognizes the burden of childcare and housework falls on women and girls. So the government is committed to understanding the reasons for this and taking positive steps to remedy the solution. Right. This naturally has an impact on whether girls can attend school. It determines whether women can work outside the house and what kind of jobs and careers they can have. The government has set up Anganwadis or child care centers in several villages in the country. The government has passed laws that make it mandatory for organizations that have more than 30 women employees to provide creche facilities. So the government has passed several passed laws for that create a proper environment for women employees. Those are like mandatory for organizations that have more than 30 women employees to provide creche facilities. The provision of creche helps many women to take up employment outside the home. It also makes it possible for more girls to attend schools. Right. And glossary. Identity. Identity is a sense of self-awareness of who one is. Typically, a person can have several identities. For example, a person can be a girl, a sister, and a musician. Right. This is the identity. Double burden literally means a double load. This term is commonly used to describe the woman's work situation. It has emerged from a recognition that women typically labor both inside the home and outside. So this is double burden. They work inside the home and also outside. Caregiving. Caregiving refers to a range of tasks related to looking after and nurturing. Besides physical tasks, they also involve a strong emotional aspect. Devalued. When someone is not given due recognition for a task or job they have done, they can feel devalued. For example, If a boy has put in a lot of effort into making a special birthday gift for his friend and this friend does not say anything about this, then the boy may feel devalued, right? So this is the end of the chapter. Thank you.